Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome back to Elite Dangerous. They are likely to cost billions of credits, they are huge, have 16 landing pads and support various styles of gameplay. Now that's a pretty broad overview of fleet carriers, but it doesn't really tell us a whole lot about the specifics or even why someone would want one. So let's take a look at the information available and have a think about what fleet carriers could bring to the game. Fleet carriers then could be viewed from two opposite perspectives. Either they totally change how the game is played, for example by becoming mobile bases of operations that allow us to store commodities, mine on a mass scale, or somehow assist with the combat. Or alternatively, carriers might have very little impact on the overall game mechanics and merely act as mobile space stations and only offer existing functionality that can currently be found on stations. Of course, far more likely is the middle ground, where players will find new uses for the carriers, such as using them as bases for deep space exploration or grouping points for BGS gameplay. Now, as far as I can see at the moment, the biggest unknown is what precisely do support vessels do? Right now, we know that support vessels will determine the role of the carrier that they are assigned to. So, an exploration support vessel will be assigned to an exploration-focused fleet carrier, and likewise, a combat support vessel will be assigned to a combat-focused fleet carrier. This in turn will determine the carrier's loadout, and the loadout is what modules the carrier will have available in its outfitting area. So a mining-focused carrier, for example, would have mining-related modules in the outfitting. In part then, support vessels act as a visual indicator telling us what modules the carrier outfits. Personally, I'd like to see the support vessels have a far wider purpose than this, however, and I'd like to see, for example, mining support vessels allowing for the storage of mined materials, or an exploration support vessel offering improved system and planetary scanning functionality. I do suspect this is unlikely, however, but who knows? There's still far more information to be revealed at this stage. But even without offering brand new game mechanics, carriers do change how players will approach certain aspects of the game, and this is true for a number of reasons. Fleet carriers, for example, will be persistent, so even when you log out of the game, they will remain in the game. They also work in all three game modes, with the implication being that the carrier will be persistent across solo, private and open, just like stations and megaships. This means that players will effectively be able to place the equivalent of a space station wherever they want. And with a 500 light year jump range, as well as the ability to jump whenever a player wants, this opens up a lot of possibilities, although this will also be dependent on how fuel actually works. Now, as far as we know, fuel for fleet carrier jumps will be a new collectible resource. However, it's also one that can be purchased at stations, which means players won't actually be forced to grind for the fuel, at least all the time they're in the bubble. Hopefully it won't be too expensive though, and whatever the resource turns out to be, it will certainly need to be widely available, as fleet carriers will be able to be taken to any location in the galaxy, so even the most remote of regions, players will need to be able to find this fuel. For me then, with my primary focus being on exploration, I really like the idea of taking a fleet carrier out into deep space. I do have some concerns here though, mostly time-based ones. For example, how long will it take to get anywhere? This will vary depending on a number of factors. For example, how many jumps can a carrier make with a full tank of fuel? Will there be a cooldown on the jump drive? For example, maybe it will only be able to jump once every 24, 48 or 72 hours. How long does it take to gather resources for a jump? And if any of these are too high, it could take weeks to travel just a few thousand light years, and that would seriously put a dampener on things, especially for exploration vessels. But having the mobile base in deep space, well, that's certainly going to be a great help, if only it's used for repairs or the ability to swap modules. A few other things also come to mind here. With the 500 light year jump range, the carriers will easily be able to get to more or less some of the currently out of range locations, which in turn opens up some potential trolling, such as carrying your friends out to an out of reach star system in your carrier and then abandon them there. You just know it's gonna happen. One thing that I feel would be a game changer is if the carriers have shipyards. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of players are assuming that this is actually going to be a thing, that they would be able to transfer their ships into the carrier and have the carrier store multiple ships, but this hasn't been confirmed. It's by no means a certainty, so we don't actually know. But if it does happen, then if it is a thing, it means players will be able to transport their entire fleet of ships en masse, and carrying all of your mining and combat ships to Beagle Point would be a real possibility. It certainly would shake things up a bit, and personally I'd be very, very disappointed if this doesn't become a thing. However, if it is a thing, then it's a pretty big deal for a lot of reasons. Not only would it be possible to carry your personal fleet wherever you want, but it would also enable carriers to become staging grounds for mass PvP and BGS operations. Now, understandably, there's a huge amount of speculation going on regarding fleet carriers all over the forums, Reddit, YouTube and other places on the internet. The limited amount of information Frontier have given on carriers only feeds this speculation, and in part that may be their intent. After all, it does get players talking. But ultimately, at this point, we don't really know what impact carriers will have on the game, and this really is hard to measure, as it only takes something very simple such as the availability or non-availability of carrier-based shipyards to totally change how players would actually use the carriers. And that's without considering whether or not support vessels will actually bring anything practical to the game, for example commodity storage. I guess we'll have to see. Now, if you're intending on getting a fleet carrier, I'd love to hear what you're planning on doing with it, what sort of features you'd like it to have, or what sort of functionality you're actually expecting. Do let me know in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.